The European season of Formula One will begin at the 4.909-kilometer Autodromo Internazionale Enzo e Dino Ferrari, Ferrari's home circuit. The first quarter of the 2025 F1 championship is now behind us, dominated far and wide by the impressive McLaren, which managed to win 5 out of 6 races. What is concerning is the extent of the technical advantage the McL-39 single-seater has shown over its closest rivals. A gap which, according to George Russell, cannot be closed with any kind of upgrade by Mercedes, Red Bull, or Ferrari. The Emilia Romagna Grand Prix weekend will be the first round in which the top teams will debut their first aerodynamic updates on their respective cars. In the third race after Monte Carlo, at the Circuit de Catalunya-Barcelona in Spain, the much-discussed technical directive TD018 regarding the deflection of front wings will come into effect. The supremacy of the papaya-colored cars is giving rise to subliminal narratives based solely on hope. In light of what we saw last season, many expected the competitive order to be more balanced. Instead, the cars designed by the team led by former Ferrari race engineer Andrea Stella have unfortunately crushed the competition. Their rivals are left with nothing but hope. The most overused hope is based on the trend of last Formula One season. At this point in the championship, exactly 12 months ago, Red Bull held a position of technological dominance comparable to that of the McL-39. In last year's edition of the Imola Grand Prix, the technological handover between the Milton Keynes and Woking cars occurred, even though Max Verstappen managed to win a fiercely contested race in Italy. Could McLaren's and even Ferrari's remarkable recovery last season inspire the current rivals of the historic English team? Or is this a baseless parallel? Rational thinking can only lead to the second option. Red Bull's decline 12 months ago was the result of 2 factors. By Adrian Newey's own admission, the RB20 single-seater was an overly conservative project. The brilliant British designer admitted he feared the rivals' comeback. Secondly, the storm triggered by the internal investigation into Christian Horner seriously destabilized the team at all levels. Meanwhile, McLaren has continued its virtuous path, which has taken it in just 2 years from the back of the grid to the top of the Premier class. In short, there is no reason to believe that the papaya cars could suddenly be caught by their rivals. Unfortunately, hope clashes with Ferrari's desire to climb back up. Without a doubt, the prancing horse can and must improve significantly, but thinking it could challenge the reigning world champion's leadership is sadly completely unrealistic. Another theory, in our view incorrect, is that the introduction of the technical directive on front-wing flexibility could erode part of the McL-39's performance advantage. A remote possibility, considering the fact that all teams have been exploiting wing flexibility for years to gain a drag advantage based on the speeds of the various cars. In essence, if there is an effect, it will have roughly the same impact on all cars. The last hope for those breathlessly chasing the cars of Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris can only be the updates. However, Mercedes driver George Russell does not seem too optimistic about this, as the British driver stated that there is no update which can close this gap unless the FIA steps in. The same reasoning applies to the technical directive. All teams will continue to develop their respective technical projects, and if McLaren continues on its current path, who can threaten them? For Ferrari, the situation is even more complicated. The prancing horse's car is plagued by design flaws that cannot be completely erased through fixes. The group led by technical director Loic Serra is finalizing a new version of the SF-25 car. We are referring to what could truly be called a B version, compared to the car we have seen so far in the start of the 2025 Formula One Championship. The SF-25B could be the only technical alternative to McLaren, as it will be a thoroughly revised project. However, considering its debut will come deep into the season, at the Circuit de Catalunya in Montmello, the enormous effort by the men from Maranello could unfortunately end up being wasted in 2025. For now, the focus shifts to the next round of the season. After races in Australia, Asia, the Middle East, and America, Formula One finally returns to Europe and the beating heart of Italy, a short distance from Maranello. The fourth made in Italy, a dell'Emilia Romagna Grand Prix, since the Enzo e Dino Ferrari Autodromo returned to the Formula One calendar in 2020, is the first of 2 home races for Ferrari, the team therefore able to count on the unwavering support of its home tifosi. The home crowd will try to bring all their warmth to Ferrari, hoping for a reaction of pride from the Italian side. The Miami Grand Prix was Ferrari's toughest weekend, but in Formula One, it is not uncommon for disastrous races to precede a rebound, putting the team in a position to address the issues that have surfaced. Unfortunately, the importance of the results in the qualifying sessions does not favor the SF-25, a car that excels on race day rather than in single-lap pace. One of the reasons is the difficulty in extracting peak grip from the new tire, which led to Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton qualifying on used tires 2 weeks ago at the Miami International Autodrome in Florida. Ferrari's mission will therefore be to understand the new Pirello C6 compound, which was barely used in the Bahrain preseason testing session back in February and has an even narrower operating window. Ferrari finds motivation in the belief that the Italian track will be less hostile than the previous one. Ferrari team principal Fred Vasseur confirmed in Florida that Imola would probably suit them better than Miami, as they struggled a lot with low-speed corners. There are plenty of slow corners, such as Tosa and the double at Ravazza, but they are far from the tight second sector of Miami. Despite not having long straights, Imola's average lap speed is just slightly higher than in Florida, 230 km per hour versus 226 km per hour, proving that it is a track with less speed loss. At the Imola Circuit, the car never drops below 100 km per hour, while the fastest point at the apex is 230 km per hour at Piratella. Moreover, since most of the corners are short, with the exception of Tosa, which requires good stability, it will be easier for Ferrari to find a balance. In Emilia Romagna, the season's development truly takes off. Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes have already confirmed updates, while McLaren's plans remain to be seen. Haas and Racing Bulls will try to reclaim the head of the midfield, currently occupied by the surprisingly strong Williams in Miami, and it will be interesting to see if the British team can stay close to the front-runners this weekend in Italy. But the eyes will also be on the sky, as spring weather in Santerno often brings surprises, which could be another factor that may shake up the expected outcomes. The Imola circuit is old school, which is one of the reasons it is so popular with the drivers, who really enjoy the climbs and drops that characterize the track in the foothills of the Apennines. In its current configuration, the first sector is the most demanding, starting with the long main straight past the pits, which is a DRS zone, followed by 2 high-speed chicanes at Tamburello and the Villeneuve corner, before the drivers must brake heavily for Tosa, with its gravel runoff area lying in wait. The slightest mistake can cost precious tenths in qualifying or lead to places lost in the race. The second sector features a steep climb towards Piratella Corner, one of the nicest of the whole season, followed by a downhill plunge into the fast right-handers at Acminerali, where drivers must be inch-perfect in hitting the braking point to carry enough speed into the third and final sector, which is followed by the track's one and only DRS detection point. There are not too many overtaking opportunities apart from down the main straight. That means qualifying is very important, while track position is also key during the race itself. Therefore, the most likely strategy is a one-stop to minimize the risk of being undercut. After the previous round in Miami was run to the sprint format, Imola hosts a conventional weekend, with 2 free practice sessions on Friday.